Evening, hello, and welcome to another video from Between the Ropes TV. I'm joined by regular Josh. Josh, how are you doing, mate?
I'm good. I'm not happy about this video, but I'm not too bad, mate. Yourself?
Yeah, likewise, pal. Right, tonight we're just going to go through the Frank Warren card, which is headlined by Joyce. He's up against Christian Hammer. This is for the WBO Intercontinental Heavyweight title and the WBC Silver title. Josh, it's a Frank Warren card, so we kind of expect the worst. I think if you expect the worst, you don't get too disappointed. But this one has disappointed us. But as a headline fight, is this the fight Joyce needs to get him into world title contention?
No. This. Do you know what? I'm going to start this, and I'm actually going to say well done to Frank Warren because we're used to him disappointing us as fans. But a few of his cards this year, I've thought, right, that's it. We've hit rock bottom. Like the only way is up from here. Frank can turn this around. And no, apparently, you think we've hit the bottom of the barrel, but he's scraped a bit more and he's found new depths for us to plunge to. This is shocking. Looking at the main event, if we can really realistically call it that, I understand, Joe Joyce has been out of the ring for a year now. So I totally get the fact that he needs to come back. He needs to have a comeback fight, get some action going with the wrist. Obviously, it was a broken wrist that's kept him out. But Christian Hammer now, come on, he's 34 years old himself, 27-9, 17 stoppage wins, but he's been stopped himself 4 times. Losses recently to obviously Frank Sanchez, Hughie Fury. His last fight was a win, but it was off some, the usual sort of box rec special. And then obviously going back a bit, he's lost to Yoka, Povetkin, and obviously Tyson Fury.
So, to be fair to Hammer, he's lost to some good names.
No, this is what I was going to say. He has lost at the the top level, if you like, bar Tony Yoka, and who knows what we'll see from Hughie and Frank Sanchez.
Yeah,
but it's just not good enough. He's talking about wanting to keep Joe Joyce and Daniel Dubois active. He's talking about how he's got them into number 1 with the WBO, number 1 with the WBA. But are you similar to what we said the other week? Are you happy with putting Daniel Dubois in with Anthony Joshua or Alexander Usyk after fighting Trevor Bryan? No. And it's the same answer here, isn't it? Does Christian Hammer prepare you for Anthony Joshua or Alexander Usyk? No, it does not. No. It's pathetic. We'll learn nothing from this fight. And Frank Warren today, he's obviously been quite vocal today. And he's highlighting the fact that Joe Joyce has only had 13 professional fights, of which obviously he's won them all, 12 stoppages. We know what Joe Joyce can do now. We're not going to learn anything on Saturday. He'll win in 3 or 4 rounds is my prediction, by stoppage. And, I don't get... He's 36 now, Joe Joyce, and he's a talent. If Scott was with us, obviously Scott's not a Joe Joyce fan. And I do understand the criticisms. He is a bit slow and robotic at times. However, he's got a very effective style. Let's not forget he stopped Daniel Dubois with effectively his jab. And he's a hard night's work for anybody. But my worry is now with Joe Joyce, and to be honest, a lot of Frank Warren's stable, that they're going to go stale because he's got them into these positions. We talked again about Anthony Yarde's poor world title prep, didn't we? And I think this is another one of those situations where at 36, he needs to kick on, be active, and get some big fights. And for himself, get the big paydays in. And, that's just not happening. I mean, am I wrong?
I think what I was going to ask you there was, you kind of touched on it. He is 36. So you can't have it both ways. You can't say he's 36 and he's had 13 pro fights. It's either one or the other. So what we're saying, and if we push him, because for me, I agree with you. I can't see past a Joe Joyce win. Hopefully it's a lot more impressive than his last time out. But okay, let's just say we jump the gun here, and he beats Hammer emphatically. Who's going to be that interim test that he needs? That's going to give him that preparation for a Joshua, for an Usyk, for a Fury. Who's going to be that interim fight that he needs to whet that appetite, Josh?
Do you know who would have been? Joseph Parker.
Mm.
You know, and let's be fair, I know Frank Warren's slagging Joseph Parker off for going back on his word. But, you know, I'm never going to criticise a fighter on this channel for taking the most money that they can get. If Sky and Boxer have got the checkbook out to sign Joseph Parker, fair play to him.
Yeah.
They've made a very public offer of £1.2 million to Joe Joyce to still have the fight, but obviously have it over on Sky.
Mm.
Now, what's wrong with that? Frank Warren talks a lot about backing his fighters, and he gives it all that, and all that's promotion. That's promotion. I back my fighters. Back your fighter. You've not even got to pay him. Like, the only reason you wouldn't let Joe Joyce go over to Sky to fight Joseph Parker is if you think he's going to lose. Let's be honest about that, because if not, it's a win-win. 1.2 million quid for a Joseph Parker fight. I think that's good money. Am I wrong?
No, I agree, and I think the more and more I think about it, the more and more that fight makes so much sense. It doesn't make any sense that the fight's not happening. What I'm trying to say there is, I can't. It's a fight. It's a great fight for both fighters, and in terms of the platform, that shouldn't be an issue either. If Frank Warren's so confident in his man, then allow him to fight on the Boxer platform. I guess that's what you're saying.
Exactly that. You know, because if not, you know, let's be honest, Frank Warren. You know, I saw some comments on a video that was posted earlier, and obviously he said about Joe Markovsky at his own needs to sort of slap Eddie Hearn around the back of the head for these little promoter squabbles, which are hugely entertaining for us as fans. But you can't compare Queensbury to Matchroom. I'm sorry, and I'm not. We're starting to sound, or I am anyway, starting to sound like a Matchroom fanboy on some of our videos, and that's not the case. But you just couldn't compare the two because, you know, look at the world champions that Matchroom and Eddie's got compared to Frank Warren's about to put Joe Joyce, Daniel Dubois, whoever gets called first, in world title fights after terrible preparation. He's doing the same with Anthony Yard. His stable's going to get shot to bits realistically. And, you know, and for us as British fight fans, we're getting robbed in the process because who knows, with better preparation and more activity, Joe Joyce could quite well become a world champion. We don't know. We've not seen him at those levels, which is another thing the Joseph Parker fight would give us because we've seen Joe Parker mix it at that level. Let's see if he can. You know, at the minute with Dubois and Joyce, who knows what they can realistically do.
You'll give Joyce that acid test, and I'm wondering, just as another name before we quickly move on, somebody as well like a Martin Bacoli would also give Joe Joyce that acid test as well. Has he, you know, the chin check? We all think he's got a good chin. We think he's got good stamina, but how effective is he in those later rounds against a very durable opponent? Would you agree there? Would you say that Bacoli's probably not a name or doesn't give him enough reward to take that risk?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think Martin Bacoli, especially after what he's just done with Tony Yoka over in France, I think he's now a bogeyman of the division because his name isn't big enough to warrant people calling him out, but he's too good. You know, if you think us as hardcore fight fans, and I don't like using that term, my mouth would be watering at a Joe Joyce Martin Bacoli fight. I'd be looking forward to it. But if you went to, you know, Joe Blogs in a pub and said, "Oh, Bacoli Joyce," they'd be like, "No." So it's just not viable, sadly.
Yeah.
The only thing that I think we will end up getting, which again doesn't really teach us anything, is a Joyce Dubois rematch. I think, let's be honest, we'll probably see that in a stadium next summer. And last thing I just want to say about like the joke that is Frank Warren in 2022, he's banging on about he's got his fighters into these positions. Firstly, no, you negotiate and do a bit, obviously, do a lot in the background, I appreciate, but the fighters get themselves to these positions. And also, why is a WBO mandatory going to be called? Obviously, they're privy to information we're not. But Alexander Usyk was a mandatory last September for Anthony Joshua. Obviously, they're having the rematch now, which I suppose goes down as a voluntary. But it should be the WBO, which would be Dubois next. So I don't get why he's even entertaining the idea of, you know, an IBF mandatory would come unless the belts get fragmented before a WBO if they're taking it. He's just shocking. I hate to say it, and, you know, he's a legendary promoter in the game and he's done some great stuff over the years, but retire now. He's just...
you feel all right? Did he just give Frank Warren a compliment?
Well, he has done over the years. We try and remain impartial, but 2022 has been an absolute shocker for him, and he needs to just retire and leave it to the kids.
let Francis, let young Francis take over. Yeah, I agree. Moving on to the next fight, we've got Jason Cunningham against Zolani Teti. This one is down at super bantamweight for the Commonwealth belt at super bantamweight. Now, Zolani Teti is a name boxing fans will remember from way back when he stopped the run of Paul Butler. But Jason Cunningham's been on a run of late. I mean, Teti's a tough kid, and this should give Cunningham a platform he kind of deserves after the run he's had.
No, I'd agree. He's done it. He's done it the hard way, hasn't he? In fairness to him, he's small halls and built up. So
yeah,
it's great to see him get an opportunity, and it is a tough fight. I fancy Cunningham for the win, though. What you?
Yeah, I mean, I'll go for Cunningham. I think Cunningham's had he's had 2 good wins back to back last year. He beat Gamal Yafai, the younger brother of Kal Yafai. Funny enough, Kal Yafai beat Cunningham a few years back on points. And then he had a pretty good win last year as well against Brad Foster, who's an unbeaten super bantamweight that Frank Warren has. So he had a really good year last year. He was in my sort of top 3 domestic fighters of the year. Zolani Teti, he had a early stoppage last time out. But the last fight he had was against John Ruel Casimiro. That was back in 2019. So, just a few months before the pandemic really kicked in, and he got stopped in 3 rounds, and that was over here in the UK. So he's had a decent run. I mean, when he beat Butler, he was undefeated for about 4 years. But it disappointed me because he wasn't up against the big names I thought he would be up against, and that's a common theme we say about Frank Warren fighters. They kind of spoon-fed certain opponents as opposed to being challenged against the best. And I'll probably say this is just a good test for Jason Cunningham because his boxing skills are underrated. His fight against Gamal Yafai, it really showed he can move around the ring. He can be on the back foot. He can mix it up when he has to be, and he's clever as well. Also, Tete is usually the bigger man when he fights. He's standing at 5'9", which is huge for somebody who's walking in the ring under 122 pounds. He's up against Cunningham's 5'7". Usually, Tete's opponents are a lot smaller, a bit smaller than that. So he's got the height advantage by 2 inches, but not so much. And because Cunningham's crafty on the inside and the outside, he'll be able to negate that 2-inch difference, where a lot of fighters who he's up against don't have that ring IQ to do so. So I think it's going to be a thinker's fight. I think it's going to be really strategic. It's going to be like a game of chess. It might not be appealing to the casual fan. You might hear some people call this fight boring. I know Tete's got a bit of power. I believe he's got 22 stoppages and 29 wins. So he can punch. But Cunningham isn't going to make too many mistakes in this fight. I'm going to go for a Cunningham points win. I think Cunningham needs this win to get himself in that world title mix, and I think he'll do it. But yeah, and obviously they're the 2 big fights that we're looking at in the card. Overall, the card doesn't strike you with a lot of confidence, Josh. I mean, it's not as if your face is hiding that. But I think is it just a case that perhaps Frank Warren, as the years go by, he just doesn't have the depth of talent that he used to have years gone by?
Yeah, I think there's the lack of depth in talent. I also think he's obviously been unlucky with Callum Johnson's pull-out today, which in fairness to Frank Warren, he didn't look happy about when he sort of announced it himself. So I don't know. I think that he hasn't said if it's an injury, an illness or what. So I think that may be one of those situations over the next couple of weeks. Keep your eye out for some news. I think the plot might thicken on that one. Obviously, he's had Nathan Heaney pull out as well of the card. So he's been unlucky. However, I mean, we were going to talk about it obviously until this morning. Callum Johnson's fight, I was quite impressed with. Former world title challenger. Again, after a period of inactivity, it was a good fight to come back to.
Yeah.
So I do sympathise a little bit there. But what he's doing with his biggest names in his stable, I stand by everything I've said. It's criminal virtually, and especially for the likes of Joe Joyce, who's bounced around a few different promoters and networks, and he's got to be thinking it's so obvious he was never supposed to beat Daniel Dubois. And the way they've been treated post that fight, you'd think Dubois did win anyway. It's shocking. I don't want to talk about it anymore. I'm fuming about it.
Well, since you don't want to talk about it anymore, we'll talk about the Yard Arthur comparison, because I'm starting to see shades of when Arthur beat Anthony Yard. Lyndon Arthur was talking about European titles and pushing on, but everyone else was talking about the rematch, and you could clearly see that even though he beat Yard comprehensively in the first fight, he wasn't so keen on the rematch because he wanted to push on. The rematch just happened. Yard's won, and Arthur's been forgotten about. Are we sensing that? Because I know you talked about Dubois, Joyce too. Do you think that's what Frank Warren was looking at, so he could win a game with Dubois?
Yeah, well, he was talking about it today. Dubois Joyce 2, it's a stadium fight, was reminding fans how quickly they actually sold out the O2 first time round. Obviously, the pandemic scuppered it. And I get that, and it is a big fight in fairness. But, I think that's his backup plan for his super fight, if you like, next year. He'll be hedging his bets until August the 20th. And he said it himself. He was asked about Tyson Fury's future. And until we see if Joshua beats Usyk or whoever comes out on top
wins
in that fight, he'll be hedging his bets, because let's be honest, mandatories will be delayed anyway if there's an undisputed fight to be made. We've seen it time and time again. I think he's hedging his bets. We'll see. Obviously, Dubois just fought. Joyce is fighting this weekend. We'll see them both back out before Christmas in probably another gimme. And then depending on what's happening with an undisputed fight potentially, I think we'll then see early spring next year the Dubois Joyce 2, because it'll be the biggest fight and probably biggest payday for both, to be fair.
Yeah, definitely got to agree there. I don't think I can't see them getting any other fight that will make them that kind of money. But guys, that's Josh's take on the card. Whether you agree with him or disagree with him, leave the comments below. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe on the channel. And guys, look out for the content that's coming in the next few days, in the next few weeks, because we've got some good big things planned. Take care and see you guys in the next show.